I have several questions, but the first one is about feeling, and I really get that nothing is more important than that I feel good. I can absolutely see that that is paramount to all things in life. So what I would like your help with is feeling my vibration shift, because I think my
Before you go further, we want to ask you a quick question. While it is true that nothing is more important than that you feel good, do you think that that means that it's really, really a terrible thing when you feel bad?
No, because that's the opposite of, it's the range.
And so you don't feel traumatized just about the idea of feeling bad. You're reaching for feeling good, but you don't panic if you find yourself in a mood or in a mode of good.
Because my vibrational range seems to be sort of despair to content. But I want to feel that excitement, that desire, that passion. And I think I've spent a lot of time trying to find activities that will generate that. I want to find something or feel what it feels like to feel really, really good. And I don't think I've ever really felt that. I can feel very, very peaceful and very calm and content. But to feel that things that you describe about Jerry and Esther, I'll hear people talking on the tapes or questions, and I think maybe I don't have enough contrast. But if one looked at my life, they'd say, well, it looks really great. I have a lot of things and it's very stable, but I don't have that desire for anything.
There are only two things that cause a stagnation or a slowing. Mm-hmm. One is a looking in opposite direction. In other words, resistance. Wanting something but focusing upon the opposite of it and so disallowing it. And the other is not holding thought long enough upon anything. And that's what we want to talk with you about. Mm-hmm. What genius is nothing more than attention to a subject. Attention to a subject. Because law of attraction takes care of everything else. And so it is our absolute knowing that you could make a game by saying, I'm going to focus upon and choose some subject where you have light interest and make a decision that every day you're going to spend 15 or 20 minutes talking about it, writing about it, looking through magazines, tearing out pictures about it. And law of attraction would make it bigger, 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 really fast in your experience. In other words, you would see momentum begin to go. So if momentum is not beginning to happen, it must be because I'm looking there, and then it's not even a diffusion. It's not scattering your attention to too many different subjects. It is looking at a subject and looking at the opposite of a subject, or at the essence of the subject. Now, and we think it is more something about that is going on with you, and here's what we mean by that. Sometimes people say, as I'm wanting to be a deliberate creator, could I have too many things on my plate at one time? And we say, not really, because source energy has the ability to flood toward infinite things simultaneously. And so there is no limitation in regards to what you could flow energy toward. When you say, I want something, source energy goes to work on it, and it will expand even without your turning your attention back to it. But you cannot turn your attention to the opposite of it. What we meant by the essence of it is, as you keep saying, well, I'm not very excited, or I don't feel very lively, or I wish I could find something to be excited about. What you're doing is sort of throwing a blanket statement over who you are, and you're sort of neutralizing all desires that you've ever had by saying, my desires are not going very far, they're not very fantastic. We're not really big on probing into the past. Mm-hmm. We just want you to understand that you have a collage of vibrations going on within you. Mm-hmm. And while part of you is wanting to be eager about something, mm-hmm. there's a part of you that's got the brakes on because there was a time in your life when it felt like everything was sort of out of control. Mm-hmm. And so then you decided that you were going to take control. And we think in the taking of control, you've limited the universe's ability to yield to you all kinds of fantastic things. It's like a lot of people will say, well, I'd rather be safe than adventurous. In other words, I'll just take the safe route rather than the adventurous route, where sometimes the adventurous route gives you the most enthusiasm or gives you the most fun, you see. Jerry and Esther will plan their traveling itinerary very carefully to avoid snow or ice, because their rig, they do not even know how it would handle on the ice. It's never been on the ice or in the snow. As they plan their itinerary, they always have that in mind. Well, when they travel in the winter, there is always a possibility of it, and then they very carefully plan to leave enough time between so that they know that it might be snowy and icy on one day, but a day or two later it will not be, so they feel confident that they can get to wherever they're going. And it is our knowing that they actually would have more fun and more feeling of adventure if they would just relax and maybe even allow themselves to get into a little snow and ice. And so what keeps you from a willingness to do that? Fear of the unknown, not being sure that you can handle it. And what we want you to do, we want all of you to do, we want you to have this sense that you can deal with whatever comes up along the way, and there's no reason to limit your experience. Just get out there and get as much as you can get in terms of things that please you and surprise you and delight you, and don't put superficial limitations on things in order to hold yourself in a safer place. And that's sort of what we can feel you doing.
And how do you do that? How do I allow myself to just be wide open and not...
Here's the way you do it. We're going to give you a very powerful statement, and repeat this for a few days until it sinks in and until you really resonate with what the meaning of it is. Everything that you will someday live in terms of life experience, and by someday we mean as soon as right now, tomorrow, the next day, and the next day, or someday. Anything that you will someday live, you have first imagined. Because nothing will manifest in your experience without the imagination process happening first. So if you are wanting to spice up what manifests in your experience, then you're wanting to spice up this virtual reality that we were talking about. You're wanting to find some subjects and take some pleasure in them. And the nice thing about playing this game is that in the virtual reality game, or in what we have formerly called scripting, or what many call visualization, there's no risk because it's all just happening in your mind. You get to play it out in whatever way that you want to. But the magic of it is in the detail. The magic of it is in getting into a place that begins to feel real enough that you're wanting to actually add the impetus to it by adding more information to it. Any subject that you'd like to choose? Anything fun come to mind?
It would be teaching. I mean, I do like to teach.
So you like conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You like making...
For the most part, I'm a good speaker. Yeah.
You like interacting with someone where you feel like you're contributing in some kind of meaningful way? Mm-hmm. And so it's sort of fun when you make a point with somebody and they respond to it, and you know you've made a point and taken them to a place that maybe they wouldn't have been without the conversation. Mm-hmm. And so casual settings are usually better for that, don't you think? Where they don't feel like you're ganging up on them.
Yes.
In other words, so it doesn't feel so contrived. It's just something that happens sort of spontaneously. So it could happen when you're driving, or pick a place. What are you doing with this person? Where this casual conversation is happening, where you feel that you are uplifting them to something.
So you mean just one-on-one?
Oh,
right.
So you would prefer it in front of a group of people. That does feel more exciting? In other words, rather than just riding with someone in a car and saying meaningful things.
Me and my boyfriend riding in the car, talking and laughing and feeling excited.
Are you enjoying what he is saying and he is enjoying what you are saying? Mm-hmm. Who's doing most of the talking?
He probably is.
And who's doing most of the laughing?
Me.
And is he doing any of the laughing? Mm-hmm. What is the topic that you are batting about here?
Well, this is what I love about him. He's just ridiculous. I mean, he could be absolutely meaningless, and he's funny. Something on the road, a sign, a joke he heard, something on the radio.
And so now you're wanting to get in on it. Yesterday, someone gave Jerry a book, and it was a book about, as you're interacting with others, like employees or anyone who is meaningful to you, and you say to them, I want, if it would be all right with you, for the next 30 days, I would like to express to you something that I appreciate about you. And Jerry and Esther both said when they heard that, well, wouldn't it be better to just do it? Why make an announcement? And then the author went on to explain that it is better to tell them, because otherwise they're going to smell something fishy if all of a sudden your relationship blossoms into this gushing verbiage about how wonderful someone is. They might smell a rat. And Jerry sort of skipped around through the book, and they enjoyed the positive upliftment, and they began thinking of people that are close to them and so many of the positive aspects, and it was really a fun exercise. But then in the back of the book, the author had written, to sort of jumpstart her readers, things in alphabetical order that you might say, which made Esther sort of laugh, and Jerry too, as they were going through the list, because then they began doing it to each other. And it was so corny, and then it became not important whether it was uplifting or not. It just had to start with the right letter. And then they began playing the game where each one of them would say a word, and it had to be the next word in the alphabet. And they were laughing very, very hard, just taking something that was someone else's idea, and it was actually a good idea. And then they worked it over until they understood the point of it, and then they took it far past the point of it, into the ridiculous, into a point that was much more meaningful for them, and played with it for 3 days. In other words, almost anything that either one of them said to the other one started with the letter A for the first day. In other words, they could not stop themselves from it, and even this morning it was carrying on a little bit. That's what you're reaching for. It's staying on a subject long enough that you're milking it for all of its intrinsic value to uplift and please and delight you. That's the thing that you love about your boyfriend, you say. He can take any subject and make fun from it. And that is as important as anything that we're talking about here. In other words, that's what that focus is. And so we would say, in retrospect, after hearing this from you, that you are doing more of that than you were giving yourself credit for. And that blanket that we are saying you keep throwing over the essence of things comes when you forget about moments like that and instead say, well, I don't have very many eager or passionate or fun-filled moments. I'm just mostly content. And we say, you might mostly be content, but you do have those spikes. And as you acknowledge that you have those spikes and then you plan them on purpose, it's not so different from, Esther thought, wouldn't that be fun at a party to just get people together and play this game where you have to do things alphabetically? In other words, what fun that is. Or pick any subject. In other words, her mind just ran away with her. She had many pleasant hours, far deviated from what the author's intent of the book was, but still very joyful hours as they are moving along. And so that's all. It isn't a big thing. It's just focusing on something that feels mildly pleasant and milking it for more and 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 more pleasure. That's all that it is. And so you imagine yourself driving down the road, you're with your boyfriend, you've found some fun game, you're both interested in it, you're both excited about it. You discover that you're almost as funny as he is. He discovers that you're almost as funny as he is. He discovers that you're the one that sets him up for the funny stuff. You discover that you're the one that sets him up for the funny stuff. You discover that an entire universe is conspiring to play with you. All kinds of things begin happening as you begin focusing in any direction about anything. Just like Jerry and Esther wanted to get in on the game that this author had set forward, the entire universe wanted to get in on the game. In other words, we could not begin to express to you all of the sequences of events that began happening that made Esther snort milk right out her nose. You see.
That's what I want. I want those blissful moments.
Yes. Well, then count the ones you're already having and anticipate more. And it is our expectation that there is much, much more. You cannot focus on a desire as you have done here without the universe conspiring to bring you all kinds of things. But the key to it really is visualize it first. Visualize the fun, visualize the eagerness, or remember snatches where you were having it. Okay. Something that Esther flashes back to often. Often, Jerry makes her laugh so hard she cannot stop. And she loves it. And if he can get one of those off in every day, he feels like his life is complete. In other words, he sort of works for it and sneaks up on her. And she feels the same way with him. And so every now and again, once she gets in one of those modes where she can just feel life flowing into her, it's like everything opens up. It is the most delicious feeling. It's better than anything you could eat or anything that you could do or anything that you could think. Just that feeling of, and then she will almost always flash back to the time that she was in high school, sitting around with chums in that light-hearted, carefree environment, finding something to laugh about and laughing until they were hurting. And so one compounds on the other. In other words, as you have the experience and recall it and remember it and savor it and want more, then when it comes, each one builds on the next and each one builds on the next until before you know it, you're there on a whole lot of different topics.